3000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. Before we get to today's guest, I'm going to remind people to subscribe and like and follow us on Instagram. I hate doing that shit, man, but I just sort of have to now. But that's where we're at. And today's guest, I'm joined by a boxer and a rapper, Benny Sinclair. Benny, thanks for coming, man.
No worries, Maloney, man. Pleasure to be here. Represented on the 3000 podcast.
That's it, man. Is that the right way to introduce you? Are you a rapper, former boxer? Are you, what labels are we going to throw on you today?
I'd say rapper, former boxer.
Okay.
Yeah, although I still box for fitness. I'm not in the ring competing anymore and stuff like that. So I still coach people, but yeah, primarily I rap and that sort of do. That's what I'm most passionate about at the moment.
That's what it's all about. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got some good stories, man. So tell us how a young Benny gets to where he is at this stage of his life. Where did you grow up, man, and how did your journey start?
Yeah, grew up. Well, I'm from a broken home. Mum's family's from Germany. My parents broke up when I was pretty young. We moved to the Prahran Commission flats and with my grandparents. And we didn't last there too long because we had some run-ins with some neighbours, or my grandparents did, and we had to move. So we went out to sort of the suburbs of like Noble Park, Springvale, and did my first year of primary school out there. Mm-hmm. And and then when my mum later remarried, we moved to the suburb of Malvern. So I was there for about 10 years. So I went from sort of working class to kind of more of an affluent, or it was actually back in the late 80s, it was more of a what used to be called a yuppie sort of area, up and coming area.
It's only about 500 metres from Prahran, though.
Yeah, well, that's it, yeah. And so we found ourselves sort of quite often, when we were old enough to jump on a tram, going down to Prahran and hanging out at the skate park or grabbing markers and from wherever and tagging lanes and alleyways and stuff like that at a pretty young age. And I guess, at that sort of turning point, I, started to get into hip hop and get into the whole industry. And I think I was first inspired by the first rap I wrote was probably about 8, and I think it was not long after Tone Loc started releasing his stuff on commercial radio here, and just that beat and the energy that he used to bring to his games really inspired me from a young age. Mm-hmm. And then later on, when NWA and all that sort of stuff started coming out, Public Enemy, started to sort of write in books and all that sort of stuff. But I didn't really take my rapping too seriously. I didn't think there was any way I could make a living from it or even make a career from it, and didn't even know how to get to a studio or anything like that. So we just used to record on tape decks and
boom boxes up there.
Yeah, man, that little red one up there. I think I had one of those, something like that, and just have the track playing on one side and press record and just rap over it. Rap over the instrumentals of various tracks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I always loved boxing as well. Like it was some of I grew up in the era of Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson was just king of boxing. Yep. And, when he lost his fight, I can just remember the day, I remember the morning, rocking up to school.
Which fight? I'm not a big boxing guy, so I'll tell you now. So let's explain the boxing stuff to me, because I'm not really much of a boxing guy.
Yeah, well, I think it was 1990. Yeah. Mike Tyson lost his first fight to Buster Douglas.
Okay, yeah.
And the funny thing about Buster Douglas was my mum, well, before she remarried, my surname changed to Douglas. Right. So Buster, and people in the playground used to call me Dougie and Douglas. So Buster Douglas has beaten Mike Tyson. I'm like, wow. So that was sort of drawing me towards the boxing and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was such a big cultural reference back in those days, and still is today. Mike Tyson and boxing and and also like my father's side, we've got a bit of African ancestry, and which I didn't know a lot about when I was young, because I didn't grow up with Dad. Yep. But I just knew that we, through my grandmother, we were part black, and just seeing some of these African Americans conquering the world, it sort of led me to feel like, have some of my own aspirations, and then seeing the rappers evolve as well. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be part of that. Yep. So I was always drawn to the hip hop and the boxing kind of almost simultaneously.
Yeah, for sure. It was a big moment for both those sort of cultures as well.
Yeah.
So I think around that time, like I said, I'm not a fucking boxing guy much. I don't know much about it. Yeah. But Jeff Fennick was on a global scale at that time sort of as well, which made it big in Australia also.
Yeah.
Timing the same sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, back in the 80s, you could even... I remember watching Mike Tyson and Jeff Fennick just on like free-to-air like Channel 7 or something, World of Sport.
There was no
or
pay TV.
Nah,
Yeah.
and that was the norm.
Yeah.
And then, they were probably the first two names I knew in boxing, Jeff Fennick and Mike Tyson. And ironically, Jeff Fennick ended up being Mike Tyson's coach.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and later on in life, I've actually never met Jeff Fennick in person, but we're friends on social media, and he wish me a happy birthday every year.
Oh, that's awesome.
It just makes my birthday, whether I do anything or not.
Yeah.
And also send him a copy of my book, which I guess we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And he was one of the first guys to put up a picture of him holding it and all that sort of stuff. So
Amazing.
he's a great bloke, and
for sure.
it's from the limited experience I have in meeting him, he's always been very kind to me. So
For sure.
Yeah.
So how do you get in? So boxing is there. It's in the mainstream. It's happening. Mike Tyson's doing his thing. When do you put the gloves on? Do you go to a local sort of gym? Where are you doing it? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I guess the first time I ever put on gloves, I can remember it clearly. I was about 10 years old. I got invited to a birthday party. And I was a stocky kid. Yeah. Like I grew up with the German grandparents feeding you. I was a little bit like a little Augustus,
Yeah.
like really chubby and stocky. And so the kid was an Irish kid. He had an Olympic Games birthday party, and there was no way I was going to win the running races and the other stuff they had on. So thankfully they got us to put on thankfully for me, we got to put on the boxing gloves, and I just cut loose. Started just beating up some of the other kids, and I got the gold medal, and it was that was the first taste of it. But I was only about 10, and it took me a few years to actually formally get to a boxing gym.
Was there fighting at school or anything? You were just doing this as like what you were as a discipline?
Yeah, primarily, like I moved around a few different schools. So, firstly doing school in Springvale, then we moved to Ashwood briefly in between, actually, and then we moved to Malvern. So you always had to adapt to different personalities, but I think I was quite good at that. I always seemed to just kind of fit in. I didn't even though I was probably could have been teased for my weight and stuff like that. I never really did, or I never let it get to me too much. I was a bit self-conscious, but more towards sort of the early teens, like high school era, and like I said, venturing off into trams and trains into different neighbourhoods, and you started, and whatever it is, chatting up chicks and stuff like that as you do. I started to feel the heat a little bit, and there was, I guess, as a juvenile, got a bit of a reputation. This guy's going around these neighbourhoods doing this and that, and people wanted to sort of challenge you a little bit. So I felt like I needed to do some sort of self-defense. But what actually got me to do the first sort of formal training, it was had a little run-in with the law, nothing major, but we're only about 13, 14, and one of the parents in the neighbourhood got us all together and enrolled us into karate classes.
Okay.
So I started doing karate.
She's like, focus this energy in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly. And that was great. I really liked it. And I was right into all the martial arts movies. Like, I used to watch Bruce Lee, Flat Out, and Jean-Claude Van Damme and all that sort of stuff. But for people living in Melbourne, we were pretty poor. Like I did without a lot of things when I was young. The reason being because they bought a old rundown house that they tried to renovate, but they being my stepdad and my mum, and we didn't have heating. We didn't even have 3 meals sometimes. So it was really, really stretched beyond our means, which was at the time it was hard for me to get my head around. And I was also an older brother to my siblings, so it was a bit of a challenging time. I didn't quite know where I fitted in, and so hence why, the brushings with the law and trying to sort of find myself more or less. And my ethnicity was a bit weird. Am I German? Am I Aussie? Am I African? What the hell am I?
It's a very Caucasian part of the world there in Malvern.
Exactly. Yeah. And I felt like, I didn't feel Caucasian in that neighbourhood. You know what I mean? I'm predominantly European, but I felt out of place is probably the best way to say it. So it took me time to grow into that. So, I really needed an outlet. But when we got to karate, it was all good until we got to the point where the instructor said, you got to buy a gi, you got to do gradings. And we were just so poor that we couldn't afford any of that stuff.
Right.
I used to play footy on the weekends as well. And we couldn't even afford footy boots. Like my coach gave me a second-hand pair of footy boots and would take me to all the games and sort of stuff like that. So, it was tough because I would have I would have liked to live back in Noble Park and just live comfortably, live with my grandparents where that hearty food was always on the table. Uma used to wake up in the morning and make me pancakes and stuff like that. And, and you go into this frugal living. It was hard to get my head around, but I understand it now, but it was challenging. And anyway, so karate fell through for a while, and then I was back being a little menace, doing all that sort of little vandal and little petty thief and trying to grow weed or whatever it was back then, all sorts of stuff. And then it was just one day, I was just at a party and I was just like, it was in my teens. It was probably about 15, and I just started starting on everyone for no fucking good reason. And I had a bit of an epiphany, and I got back home, and again, this is why we probably brought up Mike Tyson earlier. A doco on Mike Tyson comes on SBS, and it was about how he was. I didn't know all this. I just thought he was a boxer an athlete. I didn't know he was a person and all that sort of stuff.
Because you didn't know. Back then, you couldn't do the research because the internet's not existed.
There was no internet.
So when you stumbled upon a doco, you're like, all right, we can learn some shit here.
Exactly. And mind you, when I say TV, I'm talking about something probably about that size. And I think it might have even been black and white, and it was just a little portable TV. And it was about him, how he went to, through trouble and went to juvenile home and got his life back on track and all that sort of stuff. And it was like, this is what I've got to do. It
spoke to you.
Yeah, it spoke to me. And so I had to go and do some boxing, but I lived in Malvern. There weren't too many boxing gyms around there. But this is mid-90s. Malvern Martial Arts had just opened up in... I don't know if it's still there, but it used to be on Malvern Road in Malvern, and we lived around that sort of area. And walked in, and they had kickboxing, and it was the next best thing. And I did like my martial arts as well, so I started doing a bit of kickboxing, and ended up within the first year or so I had one kickboxing fight, and then a mate of mine who's rest in peace, Kana, used to be in KSA. He was training at Leo Berry's down in Richmond, who another one of your guests, Alacor, used to train as well. Yep. And so I met Alacor down at that gym, and but Kana was actually the one that took me to Leo Berry's in Richmond.
Yeah. Whereabouts is it still there?
They've moved locations, but it used to be behind the Macca's.
Yeah.
Just
there's like a
Swan Street.
Swan Street.
Yeah. So right behind the Macca's, but it's still in that vicinity. It's closer to the Richmond Barbs now.
Yep.
So I haven't been there since early 2000s. I went there once, but I used to train with Leo, the old fella Leo, who knew my stepdad's father. My stepdad's father was a boxer as well, and they had photos of each other together and stuff like that. So he sort of took us in and started training there, but I didn't fight under Leo. I ended up training under another trainer.
Did you show promise from an early age? Like, were they? Did you need to be?
Well, this is I think because I'd done a bit of kickboxing, I walked in thinking I just thought you probably had to be a bit more skilled to be a kickboxer because we were actually using legs and elbows and all sorts of stuff as well. But it wasn't the case. Boxing, I had to be a lot fitter. And just the rhythm was different. But I fell in love with the rhythm of boxing because when we would walk into Leo's, you'd just have the speedball pounding. And again, hip hop spoke to me because I was hearing beats. I was hearing the heavy bag being punched. I was hearing the speedball. I was hearing the skipping rope going like a snare or something. And
like a metronome.
Exactly, like a metronome. Exactly right. And so I just loved it. And when it came to sparring, that I had to took a little couple months to adjust to that change in rhythm because also with the kickboxing the distancing is different when you got the space of a leg compared to a fist. You got to takes a little while to get used to. But I tell you this, I'd like to think I walked in and they thought this guy's got a lot of potential, but I know that I just trained my ass off. Like I'd get there 2 hours in the gym, be dripping with sweat. I would. The trainer would have some bandages wrapped. Alacor, remember this? They used to have the bandages wrapped around the boxing ring. Yeah. And Leo would tape up your hands. And every session, my wraps would be soaked in blood. Like I'd just be pounding the heavy bag. and
Your own blood, not someone else's.
mine. Yeah. Mostly from just hitting the bag because Leo, you'd spar as well.
Yeah.
Just most of the damage, sort of like from underneath the gloves, would be covered in blood. But then Leo would hang out the wraps on the ring, and I'd rock up the next day, and I'd go, oh yeah, they're mine. I could see the blood stains. So
there,
So
what are you weighing at this stage? Like, because I don't know much about boxing, right? So you're going in there untrained to start with.
Yeah.
So what are you weighing? What do you want to be at? You know.
Well, I ended up being my first amateur fight. I was a junior middleweight, which is about under 71 kilos.
Yep.
So between I fought later on in my career. I fought a little bit heavier, but most of the fights were between 70 and about 76. So I was junior middle up to middleweight. So there's a couple weight. Oh, actually, when you get over 76, you fall into the super middleweight category. So there's sort of three.
It's a lot of categories.
A lot of categories, but when you get sort of a little bit, like when you get to heavyweight, it's over 91, it's just open. Or when you get to cruiserweight, there's a 10 kilo gap.
Okay.
But in the middleweight and the lower divisions, there's every 2-3 kilos is a new division.
So when you walk in there and you weigh 70 kilos, they say, all right, well, you've got to trim down, you've got to put size on.
Yeah.
Or did they think like that? Is that how it works?
It's more about looking at your height. And I probably, I love Mike Tyson. If they had said, hey, we want you to beef up and be a heavyweight, I would have definitely went down that road. I would have loved to. But they looked at my height. And I think actually when I did put on weight, I was a little bit sluggish. Like I was strong, but I'd tend to wrestle more than box nice and cleanly. Yep. And so the skills would go out the window for a bit of, for more brute sort of strength rather than. So I think I was best when I look back on the boxing career. I think I was best at that low 70 kilo sort of weight limit, and
which isn't much when you think about it for someone,
Yeah, not like I'd
for a grown human. That's not
let's
much.
just address the elephant in the room. I'm a heavyweight now. So,
at 71, it's not much.
Nah. And so that was when you're 17. So my amateur sort of career, I guess, was sort of getting into it about 17 to about 21, and then sort of had my last fight at about 21 in the amateurs, and I didn't worry so much. I didn't know all that stuff about nutrition. Like I didn't even realise that if you had sweet drinks that was fattening, like the sugar in it. It just wasn't it just wasn't really drummed into us. It was just.
And the German heritage is like, just eat, you'll be right.
Oh, any time you're sick, it's eat. It just eat more. That's how I got so big because I'm actually as a kid I was asthmatic and I still am. It's sort of flared up a bit in the last few years, but it's just like their remedy was just eat. Just eat and eat and eat. So yeah,
which isn't necessarily the worst way to do it, but you need to balance it out. You don't need to just eat yourself into.
Nah. Yeah. No, it made. Yeah, it worked. It kept me healthy. I wouldn't say I was big and unhealthy. Okay. I was just solid.
So let's talk about when you first start your amateur fights. So as I'm guessing, amateur means there's no money. You're just doing it for competitive stuff. So you spar, then eventually your coach says, you're ready to have your first amateur fight.
Yeah. So what happened, I was at Leo's for about almost 2 or 3 years in the end. No, it's probably about 2 years. It seemed like 10 years when you're that age and you're hungry and you just want to get in there and fight and have.
So you're like, put me in, I'm ready.
Put me in. I wanted to go straight from kickboxing. All right, next couple months. But it took some time, and I got persuaded in a positive way to sort of join up with another trainer, and he did put me in straight away. And
is that something that happens a lot? That people see young kids with a bit of talent and they probably make them peak too early? Is that a thing that happens, or is it?
Yeah, I think that was Leo's theory, just to kind of let me let me do the apprenticeship, which I appreciate. It's made me, a better coach.
Yep.
But yeah, I was young, I sometimes, no regrets in life because everything kind of worked out. But of course I felt sad for leaving Leo's because I had so many fond memories of that place and that gym, and it was very nostalgic. You know, it was it was so, it was just great being there. But then I had this other guy just saying, look, yeah, we'll get you a fight and we'll put you through to the Victorian state titles and all that sort of stuff, and that happened. And so I sort of won when I went in when I went for my first fight, I won it pretty easily, and then they just sort of put us straight through to the sort of novice Victorian fight titles, won that pretty easily,
and then
went on.
What division are you in?
I was still a junior middleweight.
So that's 70.
Yeah, about 70, 71 kilos. Yeah, I think we had to be under 71 back then. I think they might have increased it a little bit over the years.
People are getting bigger.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
They are.
I reckon it's gone up a couple kilos. I reckon the limit for that now is 73, but back then I think it was 71. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure.
So you win that one easily.
Yeah.
And then where do you go?
Well, I walked around the streets thinking I was Mike Tyson for a little while.
Walked around Bolford going,
it wasn't many people that were really going to question you too much around there. But
does your reputation follow you around? Are people like Benny fucking boxers now, man? Like, is that people saying that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely there's a bit of notoriety sort of attached to it. I think I'd sort of built up a bit of that sort of notoriety on the streets and just doing the stupid shit. But now this was something that people respected, and it wasn't,
had a title attached to it.
Yeah, it wasn't this guy. I'd avoid him. He's a bit of bad news. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was barred from all the fucking parties and all that sort of shit. And
just for starting shit.
Starting shit and just being a dickhead, and I own it. And, I was just lost, man. I was just looking for direction. I was looking to find myself. And it was a big learning curve, but ultimately, my life's been about overcoming that adversity and trying to be a better person, and boxing just definitely gave me that
because
positive focus.
Yeah, focus and a sense of discipline. Like you can be a tough guy, but you do it in the right capacity. Yeah. And I guess learning how to, for lack of a better term, bash cunts up in the ring rather than in the streets is what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah, and you get hit too, and people can see that.
That's humbling as well.
Fucking oath, fucking oath, man. Yeah. I mean, to box, you got to be able to take the hits too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a big part of it, and tolerate them, and that was. I think that's a big part of what I liked about it as well. That this person, they're not just scared, and they're coming back at you, mate. Yeah. Like you've got to be on your best game, and I'll say. One thing about my boxing career, I never got knocked out or dropped or anything like that. I won a few on knockout and stuff like that, but I lost, and I lost a few on points. So it was more. Anytime I lost a fight, it was more that I just wasn't focused, And I might have come across a better boxer on the day, and
they were more focused.
They were more focused. It's a big. It's a lot of it's in the mind. As tough and as fit and resilient as you are. I'd say 99% of it is psychological.
Yeah, which is hard for a lot of people, I guess, that don't box like myself to get their head around, because it is definitely a very, very physical sport, but you've got to be in the right frame of mind, and you also have to play the mental head games with the other opponent. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, particularly, I mean, we're looking at my amateur, when I look back at my amateur boxing career, 20 plus years ago now, your head games are limited. I mean, it's not like the big pro fights where these guys have multiple press conferences and they're calling each other.
But you've got to be mentally ready.
You've got to be mentally ready. The time when you're at that sort of amateur or novice level, the time is he's in the corner, you're in the corner, look him in the eyes, touch gloves, don't show him any sign of weakness, and then the fight continues from there. So through that duration, and amateur fights are 3 rounds, like 6 minutes or 3-minute rounds at the best. So it's throughout that duration of that fight, you just got to, you got to be the stronger man. You got to be the stronger person, because Yeah.
So then with the amateur things, how long do you continue doing that for? You win your first one, you do okay. You start to get a bit of a chip on your shoulder, I guess. You start to walk around with a bit of bravado. Then how does the amateur career continue?
Yeah. So when I say that, I guess I also had a job. When I was doing the boxing, I also I had a job, so I wasn't getting in any trouble. I probably my mates and all that loved that I was a state champion boxer and all that sort of stuff. So I just got back in the gym and try to get to the next level, which was the for me it was the intermediate category of middleweight. So I went and fought for that, won the title there, and then got on to sort of state representation, represented Victoria, there's a few things that happened in between, like drew a fight, lost a couple on points, and like I touched on before. But ultimately, I was still, I guess, generally pretty successful. I wasn't getting hurt. I still loved it.
What's the recovery like for like amateur boxing? Like you said that the rounds there's not that many of them.
Yeah.
But you still got to pull up pretty fucking sore.
Yeah. Obviously depends on your fight too and how you perform on the day. But it was just sort of a routine, like take a few days off the fight, come back, or have a week off, have a rest, clear your mind, do something you want to do, have a few beers if you want, and all that sort of stuff. But the reason I probably stopped ultimately is when I got up to a fight when I was representing Victoria and I got disqualified, and I was very disheartened by the whole thing. I'd taken the weekend off work, we travelled interstate and all that sort of stuff. And then from there, I had to sort of make some solid decisions. Like, all right, you got disqualified. Yeah, it was a crap decision, but what did I do wrong? Could I have done more? Could I have knocked him out to stop?
Ultimately, what was the decision that they decided to do? Disqualification?
It was. I looked back at the tape later on and thought, yeah, I was doing okay, but clinching and holding, which is sort of not in the rules, but I thought he was clinching me more than him. It's a long story. At the end of the day, when the ref sort of told me off, I got a bit swore or something like that, and it was an attitude thing. It was a head thing as well. If I'd have been the cool, calm, yep, no worries, mate, and just got the job done. So I started to question myself a bit, and sort of ended up walking away from the sport and started doing security, nightclub bouncing and stuff like that. So, which was, it had the security had the lure of, I love my music. Like maybe be around music. I was young, nightlife, people like all that hard discipline training where I couldn't really go out. Well, now I can sort of be amongst it and get paid at the same time. Oh, and you get to get into the occasional scrap. Wow, and that was. It sounds so dumb. I'm embarrassed to say that, but at that age, that shit was fun, man.
And it was a different time.
It was a different time, yeah. Early 2000s we're talking, so yeah.
Yeah, different time, and I think nightclubs and what people would get away with back then was totally different to now.
Yeah.
Like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think camera phones are a game changer.
Huge.
Yeah, in a good way too, because, people would just do all sorts of crazy shit, and mostly in a good way. It depends how what people are doing with the footage, but yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But I think even with security camera footage, that like now I think you have to store clubs have to store all the footage. When back then, a fight would happen and cops turn up and they go, well, yeah, fight happened. And they've all pissed off. They go, oh, nothing to report here, and they piss off.
Yeah.
Now they have to have the footage, I think.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, but I had a few cops really get fucking dirty on me, and I think that was a sort of guilty by association thing, because I was sort of when I was bouncing, I was knocking around with some pretty sort of heavy dudes, and I started to get influenced by the fucking thrill of cash that's coming through. And and the notoriety that was coming with that as well. So there was a few years where I was sort of drawn to that kind of wannabe gangster life, And I'll say wannabe because I was never a gangster. I was just I just loved Scarface and gangster movies, and these people I was hanging out with were the next best thing. So
for sure. And in that early 2000s, Melbourne. I think the world, but Melbourne's club culture was huge. There was obviously a lot of work for security, a lot of work for people on the door. And because clubs were everywhere. It's different now.
Yeah. Well, I haven't. Like if I go out now, it'll be a movie or a bar or an event. Yep. But not
club culture was huge then, though.
Yeah. people would like, and I worked all the main strips, like from King Street to Chapel Street to you name it. I probably worked it, and I was like most of the time, a head doorman. I was copping all sorts of shit. I was always one to stand my ground. Again, never got shot, never got stabbed. Probably again, might have happened. It happened to people I know, and
Sure.
so it was different, and there were bouncers getting shot at certain clubs I work with. There were a few people I knew had been shot, and people in the other underground scene had actually been murdered. So yeah, it was full on, man.
There was a lot going on.
There was a lot going on,
and also there is a definite market for people in that security realm. To be able to talk to people, because there's one thing to be a big muscly dude, stand there and say, "Oi, fucking toe the line."
Yeah.
But also, you have to be someone who greets people at the door to actually give them a good experience.
Yeah.
You have to be able to talk to people as well.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think that's probably why I was a doorman. I used to think I was the big fucking tough cunt, but just like I've seen photos of me. Fuck, man, I was a baby face fucking bouncer. I don't know how I
But you
pulled
could
it off
talk
most of the
though,
time.
and you're personable. That's the thing.
Yeah. I never let the ego thing get to me. I was just doing, like, it ended up being a job, but initially I was just doing it for sort of, like I said, for something to do. Oh, be around the music, be around the scene, get paid. Oh, if the occasional scrap breaks out, good fun, and whatever. But but ultimately I was just a babyface bouncer, not quite knowing how I pulled it all off looking back, But I think, as you said, it again, back to the mind, just being not overreacting and just being sort of level-headed, when you needed to, and all that sort of stuff.
Maturity and hindsight's a wonderful thing, but when you're young, immature, and angsty, even if you're in your 20s, that's something you can't really necessarily just turn off.
Yeah.
The beauty of hindsight, you can say, I needed to be more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it was just sort of like, most of the time it was pretty chill, but then sometimes that old inner wannabe gangster Benny would just, erupt, and it's regretful sometimes when you think about, how you could have handled things. But look, we're all human. We all have our cracking points, and some people just would poke the bear, and the baby-faced bouncer wasn't so baby-faced, but people that knew me sort of knew a little bit more about me. But
Yeah, for sure. But you wouldn't change any of that stuff because it shapes who you are now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like I said, it's still part of the journey and overcoming the adversity and all that sort of stuff. But when I probably use the term regretful kind of loosely, it's because I've experienced stuff where I've got in trouble with the, as I sort of brushed on before, with the law and stuff like that, where I didn't quite feel that I'd really done anything wrong, but it was almost guilty by association, and maybe it was the way I was carrying myself, and it was a sort of sign that, hey, you've got to change the way you're going about things, because this isn't working. You're getting yourself in all sorts of trouble, and all that sort of stuff.
So how do you come to that realization? How does Benny figure out that this is not the right path?
Sitting in the jail cell in the bottom of the magistrate's court, and just thinking, what the fuck, what happened here? I didn't fucking think did I do something wrong? But you retrace your steps, and maybe I should have addressed the judge in a better way, or but it's a learning curve, and I managed to sort of turn my life around from there and see a better way to kind of go about it, but getting back into the training, properly, because there were a few years where I trained, but I was also
had the discipline there.
But more discipline, not slacking off and not partying and all that sort of stuff, putting that aside. And
is it? But I want you to continue on that route.
Yeah.
Just as you mentioned the partying.
Yeah.
A lot of security bouncer dudes I know from back then, they kept it pretty straight and neat, appearance-wise.
Yeah.
But is there partying within that community as well?
Oh, yeah.
It is, but they
Yeah.
pretend
It
on
was-
the doors that it's not happening.
It was back then. It was ridiculous, man. Like, you know, you
And
would...
the guys at the
yeah,
door, if you wanted something, you could generally ask them and they could point you in the right direction,
100%.
which might have been in their pocket, but I don't know. if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know what I mean?
100%, man. There was all sorts of lucrative scams going on. There was also, which was, like I said, it was almost drawing you in to see, this lifestyle, but it was a dead end, man. You know, it was only limited. It was only, and club owners and, they had security footage back then. Eventually they were catching on with what was going on, and you weren't going to be working there too much longer. So, you had to change your ways, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just had to jump.
Nah.
But yeah, back to the training again on the trajectory you're on.
Yeah.
The training, getting in them and just more serious and more disciplined.
Yeah. Yeah, getting more disciplined. So, started... I think I wanted to try something a little bit different. I thought maybe give sort of bodybuilding a go. And my stepdad was actually a bodybuilder as well, and he had gyms, and so I preferred boxing, but I sort of thought, maybe I could give that a go. So I started to go real heavy on the weights, and I probably
Which is a security thing to do.
It's a security thing, and I wasn't on the juice, but with the the genetics I've spoken about, I just eat a lot and pump heavy weights, and I was bogged right up. And
so not from, say, 70 was where you were when you're a teenager. What are you getting to? Like, let's talk kgs.
Well, yeah. So I reckon, so that fighting career, like under 75, and because I wasn't really looking after myself for the first few years of bouncing, I was probably maybe 80 or something. But that's not without the intense training. So average build, I guess. And then I went to sort of right up to 115 kilos.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
For how tall then? Like
100 just under 180 centimeters. So
that's pretty big.
Yeah, big. Stocky, big neck, and all that sort of stuff. And but going heavy. Like I would lift, really heavy. Like all the compound movements, the bench and the deadlifts and all that stuff. I just load the plates up and go nuts. Yeah. Just do like less reps and all that sort of stuff. And then and then something else happened. I sort of was, I guess, through all that sort of journey of, trying to find myself again. I never gave up on the dream of rapping. I'd always write and fill pads and all that sort of stuff. And Obese Records started to sort of emerge. Well, Obese had been around for a few years, but they started to drop some independent artists.
Yep.
And we all know who they are today.
Yep.
And
they were breaking ground essentially in the Aussie hip hop stuff. Yeah.
100%. So I was like, well, maybe you can. Well, that sort of lost, like, I love this, but how can I make something of it? Well, maybe you can. And I would, I was mates with the old owners, Shaz, and all that sort of stuff. We're all childhood mates. I'd hang out at the shop and all that sort of stuff. And and Brad, me and Brad are still good mates. Brad's dropped his first CD around about that time as well, and I was like, well, maybe we can make something of this. But it wasn't until I met a guy at the gym when I was doing my heavy weights who handed me a whole bunch of hip hop discographies. So he burnt from A to Z hip hop, from West Coast to East Coast to North, South, UK rap. These were on these discs he made for me. So I just at the time I was doing, because I was getting in a bit of trouble at the clubs. The security company would send me to just watch over card yards in in the suburbs. So
like, we can't trust you with these 20-year-old kids.
Go sit in the car yards. That's where I'd ride and listen to hip hop. And and then his name's Merv the Perv, came back to me and said, what do you think of those hip hop discographies? And I said, yeah, man, they were dope. You've inspired me to get back into rapping. He goes, oh, what, you rap? And I said, yeah, I've been doing it since I was a kid. I just didn't really know how to, go about it, what to do with it, if anyone would really, really take me seriously. There was still a bit of that, sometimes people say, oh, you're white, no one's going to take you seriously. But I'd always say, oh, but my grandmother's black.
Yeah, but it's not a racial thing anyway.
Back then, they still had that mentality. I always felt that way. I was just like, well, it's just hip hop. It's just and it's part of who I am, regardless, But you'd get those weird comments.
Yeah.
but the demographic was changing in the early 2000s, and most of the people that were rapping out of Australia were white as well.
Yeah. No, it was. And it was almost deemed to be like overly white.
Yeah.
That was sort of the mentality.
Yeah.
Like Aussie hip hop was skip hop.
Yeah.
It's too white.
Yeah.
That was what people would say when you say I like Aussie hip hop.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's just white guys rapping. You're like, well, does it matter what color like people are?
Yeah. No, it doesn't, because ultimately, it's delivering a message it opened up the gates to a new audience, really, and
sure.
people started to accept hip hop more in Australia.
Yeah.
So but I can't say that being, having a bit of black heritage didn't inspire me to sort of think, well, maybe this is in my DNA. Maybe I can do it a little bit better. And that's just speaking truths here.
Yeah.
So I decided. So anyway, I teamed up with Merv the Perv, and
Merv the Perv's an amazing name. Does he like the name Merv the Perv?
He invented it, so he must.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So we would go to his pad, and we just would record beats over his computer programs. Like,
he's making instrumentals, or he's...
Well, he was piecing instrumentals together over like the old, I think it was EJ5, the program. It was almost like a PlayStation game or something.
Oh, wow.
That he would just download it onto his computer, and he'd cut up loops.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, in essence, I think my biggest inspirations from hip hop I brushed on earlier was, I can remember, driving around hearing Tone Loc, then NWA, then probably Wu-Tang, like mid 90s when I first heard 36 Chambers. I was in love. Mm-hmm. And then Jez's Liquid Swords and Ghostface, and so that was and Mobb Deep, Nas, all that sort of stuff. That really spoke to me.
All East Coast stuff.
Yeah, but I think the West Coast stuff sort of just turned the cogs a little bit more. So we started sort of rapping over old funk beats, similar to what, some of the stuff sort of Dr. Dre would have put together, bits and pieces.
Very funk sample heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we became Bouncer, the rapping Bouncer crew.
Yeah.
And no one took us seriously, but we were fucking serious about it, as you know. But it was good fun, and it was a good journey. And look, people knew us. They didn't all love us. A lot of the heads sort of snubbed us a bit, but we were passionate about what we're doing, and it paved the way for the future, really.
Do you think that choosing the name Bouncer when you were a bouncer might have been somewhat easy for them to go, is he serious?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, 100.
In hindsight.
In hindsight, look, it was Merv the Perv's idea. I was not trying to, and I went with it. I was like, well, I guess it was a little bit more sort of gimmicky or something, and I could see his point from a marketing perspective. Because he'd done a marketing degree and all that sort of stuff. So he was thinking more marketing, market these bouncers. I would have liked to just be Benny Sinclair or Bugsy, and just rap about my life and my experiences. But in essence, I did try to put that forward on the Bouncer King hits CD, because it was my experiences at the time. I was working as a doorman. We're coming across all these complex situations. Friends were getting shot. That didn't really resonate with the sort of music that Obese were bringing out at the time.
No.
Where it was just hip hop heads talking about graph and all that sort of stuff.
Very graffiti focused.
Yeah, but I was, somewhat. I wasn't a renowned grapher, but I did used to graph and tag, and we had our own, little crews and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of my mates graphed, but inevitably I was just rapping about my life and the sort of stuff I was doing. So it probably, people that would in that lifestyle got it, but outside of that lifestyle, not really. And a couple, I got a little bit of love interstate as well. They'd play our music videos on Rage and stuff like that. Like, I had a few people from Sydney or Brisbane call me up and say, oh man, that fucking, that bouncer shit's fucking dope, and or WA, and it's just there was a few, and or the States even. We had MySpace back then, and we had always getting hit up from people internationally and stuff like that.
That's the thing with hip hop, you have to speak from your own voice, your own thing.
Yeah.
If you're on the door and you're a bouncer, well, then you've got to talk about that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And what goes along with that.
Yeah.
So for someone to say, oh, no, we're not feeling that, well, that's up to them. That's their personal preference. But
Yeah.
you can only talk about what you do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more phony than talking about shit you don't do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you can only talk from your own perspective.
Yeah. So in essence, the foundations of hip hop were there.
Yeah.
But maybe, as you brushed on earlier, a lot of your security mates, it was more that straight edge.
They put that forward, whether or not it was like that.
No.
They would. You'd say to a bouncer, "Oh, what do you do?" And they go, "I don't drink. I don't take drugs."
Well, through bouncer, we called out that hell no, it's not like that. Yeah. And then and that's where we understood that it wasn't like that, but maybe generally the public didn't.
Is the juice thing? Is that something that's people turn a blind eye to in that industry, or is it something that is a well-known thing and people just go, yeah, it happens and we accept it?
Oh, like the roids and stuff like that. Yeah, look, not every single bouncer's on the juice, but a lot are, particularly if they're into the bodybuilding or I know like any sportsman, will, any sort of sport they use it, particularly the contact sports. Right. It has its it has its positives and its negatives. I personally don't think the side effects are worth it. Just it's better to stay away. But if you, it's not hard to get big if you just eat shitloads and do heavy weights or even if you just eat shitloads, and stand on the door and look tough.
Benny, we're back.
Nice.
All right. So we've established we can't remember where we were. Man, you were talking about Obese and Obese Records, which was a record label, which was sort of at that point in the early 2000s shooting Aussie hip hop into the mainstream to an extent.
Yeah.
That's got a very deep kind of graffiti hip hop sort of thing. Did you fit in with those sort of people? You knew them, you were hanging out there?
Not really, but let's put it this way. Pegs was on our album, was on the King Hits album. We did a track called The Heavies, and we put out a video that was in like a strip club. And, so that's the contrast, when you go from that. Pegs knew me on a personal level as well. So he sort of understood that these aren't the square straight bouncers. These guys are telling us about the world that we perhaps haven't heard before, and he sort of understood it. But when it come to sort of officially signing us to the Obese label and everything, he put us on distro, but he didn't sign us because...
Which is a good leg up in the first place.
Yeah, it was all right. He was always good. He was always a good dude and always good to me and everything like that.
How did you meet him? Through graffiti? Through
the other, Merv the Perv had grown up with Pegs.
That's the best name ever.
Yeah. I don't think... he even took Merv too seriously because, look, Merv was a good bloke to me and he was a good guy to work with. We had some fun and, trials and tribulations all aside. But yeah, actually got to know Pegs better from the gym.
Yeah.
And also, and Pegs' mate, Mick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we used to do a bit of boxing down the gym. I started running a few classes on the side. So I was starting to... When I talked about earlier the security and the bouncy stuff being all fun and getting around the nightlife and all that faded pretty quick. That only lasted a good 6 months, and then it just became a job, and a job that was freaking hard to tolerate sometimes. So I started to look for other outlets. So hence the rapping. Like I honestly saw that as a career that perhaps I could blow up and make a living out of that, but also started coaching a bit of boxing as well. I didn't really see myself at that point in time getting back into the boxing ring and competing, but we'll talk about that again later. But just coaching a few people, and I didn't coach Pegs or Mick, but we just sort of become friends through that sort of circle, and and people like one rapper that I did coach that ended up being on our album too was Billy Bunks.
Yep.
And
he's moved out of Melbourne now.
Yeah.
He's being very successful from what I can hear.
Yeah, he's done quite well, and he's out of Melbourne, and I think he's he's got a career now. I won't go into it too much, but he's moved on, and so he was with us. He was on the album. We had a couple.
So he was boxing. You were teaching him boxing.
Yeah. Yep. Billy had like a couple. not quite amateur fights, but pre-amateur. Like Billy was quite good. He was handy. He could look after himself and all that sort of stuff. And he was keen, and he'd train pretty hard and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we got him. Like he fought in some tournaments and stuff like that. And I was his coach. And
so how does it go? It goes amateur or pre-amateur, amateur.
So yeah, generally, look, you can just turn pro. Like if
you wanted to,
if we said Maloney, right, let's get you fit, mate. We're going to line you up. We'll get you to fight, some ex-AFL star or something like that. You can do it. Anyone can, but you got to register. You got to pass the medical and all that sort of stuff. But you'd want to have a few amateur fights first, and then I guess the opportunities just as the years went by, the opportunities came up. Like I had a lot of pre-amateur fights too, like inter-club tournaments and stuff like that, which sort of build you up because the amateur standard that I used to compete in was like the Olympic standard. So if you were in that, it was called the association, you would go through to the Olympics, and hence why I had the state representation and the state titles. It was all grooming.
Because you can't be professional as a boxer in the Olympics.
Well, not anymore. They've changed the laws again, and they've also changed the rules. So when I was an amateur boxer, strangely, this is going back in time, it was computer scoring. You'd think that'd be something that you'd have these days, but back then it was a very basic computer system where 3 refs had to push a button within a certain time limit to register a point every time they saw a punch. But it was very inconsistent. Yeah.
Bit clunky,
bit clunky. Like people, they'd miss a punch and have these weird scores. But that was the actual system they used right, in the Olympics right up until the recent Olympics or the Olympics before, and then it's gone back to the pro scoring where it's like a 10 card, and it's more. The scoring of boxing is ultimately subjective. It's a subjective sport. So who do you think won the round? All right, you award them a 10 or a 9. If the person gets knocked out, they might get an 8, and so on and so forth. So the amateurs is in line with that now, with that scoring,
which makes more sense.
It does because, and then if you want your amateurs to become pro, why change the rules? Why make it a different set of rules? Because it's like going and playing a game of footy and suddenly, if it hits the post and bounces in, it's still 6 points, or, you want to keep it consistent, like Gaelic football and Aussie rules. You want to keep it one code, right?
I think even just the way that the Olympics has let professional athletes in for some sports and not others is inconsistent in itself.
Yeah.
I think they tried to keep themselves relevant by having the NBA players come in the 90s just so people would care about the Olympics.
Yeah.
But in soccer, you can have to be under 23 or whatever.
Yeah.
There's no consistency at all.
Nah. Well, the rules is for boxing, it's something, they've still got a little bit of a grey area where it's a certain amount of fights. Like I think it's under 10 pro fights or something, which is quite a bit.
Okay.
Like, but I might be wrong there. It's a certain amount of pro fights.
But there is now some leniency to someone who could have been professional. But But imagine back in the day when you had, when you talk about Mike Tyson or something, like for him to represent the US would have been a great spectacle to watch,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's a missed opportunity from the Olympic standpoint.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was just, such a unique. I saw a comment on a famous boxer commenting on Mike Tyson. It was just a unique specimen of human. Like it's just something you just never seen, and he was just so ready to go at such a young age. And I ultimately think to turn Mike Tyson pro when they did was the right decision. But he did have a solid amateur career as well. Like he did win relative titles all around America. But not. And
he's gonna fight recently, soon, I think, at the age of 50, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a fucking...
Oh, no, he's...
one of the
guys. He'll be 57, I
57.
think, by the time the fight goes down.
He's going to fight a 27-year-old or something.
Yeah, a YouTuber, ex-Disney star called Jake Paul, and I think...
Who's going to win?
It'll all be rigged. So,
you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And people are asking me, I'm saying, don't bet on it. It'll be rigged. It's it's all entertainment at the end of the day. Sure. It'll be. I hope Mike Tyson. Obviously, I think most of the world does. But
he's got one of the best quotes, which I don't want to fuck it up. I don't want to paraphrase it.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson says, the problem with social media is people can say whatever they want without being punched in the face.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact that it comes from a boxer.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, I think that's a different one. He's got a lot of punch in the face quotes, but they're both awesome.
They all end with punch in the face, basically.
Yeah, which is great.
And we just get it.
The same punchline, no pun intended, for two separate for quotes. But yeah, amazing.
Touche, man.
Yeah. Let's go back to where were we? I don't know where we were on your journey. Where were we?
Yeah, so we're sort of brushing on, I guess graph, graph, and I know it's a big part of this podcast, and so
unintentionally, it's definitely graffiti has chosen its path.
Yeah,
I'm not a graph guy. I like it, but people that follow the show seem to fucking love it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a big part of Melbourne culture.
Huge,
and it's a big part of hip hop culture, and so to be part of it in some way, shape, or form, I'm proud to say I was at a limited level, and speaking all truth and being honest, I was a bit of a tag, a bit of a bomber. Trains, sort of throw ups on panels, that sort of stuff. Loops, back-ons, all the sort of stuff we used to get up to back in the day. But we had a crew called RSH, Raising Some Hell. Mm-hmm. There was some volatile motherfuckers in our crew. We were pretty, bit of a mixed demographically, mix of ethnicities, mix of, people from Dandenong to Malvern, Paran to Bulleen, Doncaster. Like it was just a almost.
So how did it form? How did all these guys get together?
Well, so we used to have one of our best mates growing up had the neighbourhood bottle-o, and so we befriended him pretty quick.
He had some currency.
Yeah, he definitely did. So he was from that area, and he used to always we used to travel with him down. He was from the, Bulleen, Doncaster area, so we'd hang out with them a little bit, and we sort of had a little crew with those sort of people, and then there was back in the day, this is before, the Nintendo, there was Segas, there were all those sort of home consoles, but everyone used to go to the Pinnies, the pinball parlour, and just hang out, play pool, play Street Fighter 2,
just to
play
hang
pinball,
out.
Hang out. That's what it was. Yeah. I just personally just liked hanging out there.
In St Kilda, we had Little Hustlers. Similar.
Yeah. Well, we used to occasionally pop into Little Hustlers, and that was the same sort of thing. We used to call it Jimmy's. Jim, yeah. I think because of the owner or whatever. Sometimes we'd pop into there. Sometimes we'd pop into the ones in Paran and all that sort of stuff. So we met a few other people through the sort of Pinny parlour.
Which just sounds so...
Yeah.
It makes us sound really old.
Yeah.
The Pinny parlour.
When you think about it, yeah. And, just hanging out, getting all up to all sorts of mischief. And so we, recruited a few through there as well.
Yeah.
A few through high school. And then my old mate Discreet and a few of his crew, we used to get together and hang out. And that was probably because some of the guys in our crew were skaters, and these guys used to skate. And I wasn't much of a skater, but I'd go and hang out. And
Paran was a hub there anyway.
Yeah, just hang out at the bowl or hang out at building sites around the city and stuff like that, wherever it was good to skate and just fucking bomb and all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
And so we ended up being we were RSH, and we're a group of we're all boys. There was no girls in our crew. It was all young angsty dudes that needed something, looking for direction. And there were other crews around us, and we had had the East Malvern boys, and we had KSA and 3174, because I was I lived in Noble Park, and my grandparents still lived out there, so the notoriety of 3174 was epic. I'd always, and when I'd hang out with my cousins and muck around in the streets, there'd be older 3174 heads sort of hanging around and trying to chat up my little cousins and that sort of stuff. And so I got to know some of them. So it was just constantly about just train rides. Like my mum didn't have a car, so we were always just catching a train or transport to everywhere.
Melbourne's
and
public transport's pretty solid. When you're a kid, you can get around if you have to.
Yeah, 100%. Or BMX. Or the BMX would be on the train and that. And then you just see all the graph and you see all the crews, and it's like, well, who are we? And just one day we come up with the name Raising Some Hell, and that's exactly how we went about it for a few years. And hence some of the trouble that a lot of us got into. There was was violence, there was thefts, there was all sorts of stuff going on. A lot of drinking, a lot of weed smoking. You know, probably. You know, we started missing. I wasn't like ever hooked on drugs, or it just didn't really appeal to me. But a lot of the people in our crew, you know, were doing drugs every day. But you know, I'll say this: had my first line of coke when I was about 13. You know,
That's fucking young, man.
yeah, it's just because it was around us, you know, and you know, me and one of our mates had brought it back from somewhere, and you know, we had a couple of lines, got in our BMXs. Cops chased us. We took off down the streets, and you know,
At 13, that's
man, and we got away from the cops. But the trippy thing is, man, I was sitting there on my BMX. The cops were chasing us, not because we were big drug dealers. We weren't. We were just dumb kids doing dumb shit. We didn't have helmets on, and the cops were getting heavy on the no helmets policy. Yeah. And I was riding there on my BMX with my mate. I looked at him, and almost like just must have been high if he's looking up at the stars. And I said, "Hey, bro, like if what we just did was wrong, give us a sign." And then literally a couple of seconds later, the cops just pulled out of an alley, started chasing us, and we finally got away. And just as I was dropping off my mate, I said, "Hey, there's a sign, bro." And we looked at each other, and we didn't pull up. We just got worse from there. But we didn't like, you know, coke was hard to come by. This was just a random opportunity. And I loved Tony Montana and Scarface and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah. And, you know, I didn't start sort of messing with that stuff till sort of later on, and then realised that it was a dead end and, you know, fucked it off.
It's definitely, you don't want to develop a habit for that at 13, man, because it's
Yeah.
a lot of money to come up with as a young kid.
Yeah. Well, back, I don't know. I had no idea what it would have cost back then, but nothing like today.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah.
So you mentioned that you said a little prayer or whatever.
Yeah.
And has that faith thing been a common occurrence for you? Is that something you've always had, or you've just, you know?
Yeah, there's been a lot of spiritual, a lot of stuff that's really spoken to me. You see I'm wearing the cross here, and I've brushed on my heritage. I do have a little bit of, I'm a Christian Catholic, but I wasn't baptised. I was about 14. And I've got a bit of Jewish, you know, heritage, and a bit of Middle Eastern heritage as well. So I'm more spiritual, but this isn't that representation of that spirituality. Okay. You know, this is actually a melted down gold chain that I gave to a jeweler, and we traded a few bags, and he melted it down, and you know, come up with this of just old gold that I had around the drawers, and but it's all about sort of you know, remembering that spirituality. So I've had a lot of things. That story I told you was one of the stories that really stood out in my head, that you know, was a sign that, hey, you asked for a sign and you got a sign. There's a little bit more to this.
But you didn't listen.
No. no. Hell no.
So
it was cool. It's like, yeah, we got it.
So then later in life, you realise that maybe and you're not going to put a label on it, but you just realise there's a higher power or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think the way I sort of see it is religion's more sort of cultural. Like you know, when I'm talking about having a little bit of Jewish, my grandmother was from Poland. Well, that's the way they found God. You know, Roman Catholics. Yeah. You know, it speaks for itself. This is the way the Romans sort of interpreted the religion and spread it through, you know, the ways they spread it back in, you know, throughout history. But you know, I respect all religions and all faith, and for me, it's just it's just general spirituality, you know, and just understanding that and just appreciating it, and
For sure. A lot of people that I'm talking to on this podcast, but just in general, are finding their spirituality a little bit later in life, which is interesting. And I'd love to think that it all is legit, but for some people, I feel like it may be, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying this is an overall theory. A lot of people may have done some wrong in their life, and they feel like this is a good way to make them feel better about themselves. Do you see that a bit?
All right. So I got married young, and 28, young in our times, right?
Yeah.
And the family of the girl I married was full on Catholic. You know, they were from overseas, and it was a lot more sort of practiced where they were from and all that sort of stuff. And they started taking me along to healing masses and stuff like that. And I just felt like the worst human in the world, you know. But the marriage didn't work, right? So I sort of thought me and that person didn't work, but there are things in that relationship that did work. And, you know, I've got older kids now, you know, which you never turn things back. And like, you know, I really don't believe in the word regrets. I mean, sometimes it gets used loosely in conversation, but there's never any regrets. But trying to make a religion turn around the person you are is never going to work. You've got to find that within yourself, and not just pour all your faith and all your wrongdoings and all the mistakes you've made into some sort of symbol, you know, that's really just, it's really just a cultural, like, you know, as I said, it's really just a cultural thing to give people, you know, faith. Well, you've got to find that faith within yourself. You've got to see the answers for yourself and you know, and feel it. So I don't think that's the answer for being a better person. You've got to do stuff.
Yeah.
You've got to get out there and make a difference.
There's no cheat code for it. You can't just go, I've just decided this is it and now I'm a good person. You've got to make the changes.
Yeah.
And if that does or doesn't include some sort of newfound religion, that's what you've got to do.
Yeah. You know, going to church every day of the week, and it's not going to make a difference if you're not really making a difference.
Yeah.
You know?
I see it happen a fair bit. I think people have been, you know, doing the wrong thing for a large portion of their life, and they say, now I've found God. I'm like, well, that doesn't excuse you. I know you got to be practicing and being a better human all the time.
Yeah.
Just to right yourself, you know, to feel good about yourself. And I'm not religious.
No.
That's just my outside, you know.
And when you say found God, well, you know, did God find you? I mean, what do you mean by that? If you really believe in God, God's everywhere. God's everything. You know, it's the air we breathe. It's the water you know, God is this. That God is the universe. That's how I see it. And it's there, but just, you know, just do right. Do what you feel's right, and you'll probably find the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, I think I'd just love if there was a way for people to better themselves as individuals without putting this label on it that I've now found this sort of...
I agree.
You know, and that happens a lot, man. I'm just seeing it a lot. Like, can't we just all decide that you can just become a better person without putting a religious connotation to it?
I agree. I 100% agree, man. Actions always speak louder than words.
That's the thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I mean. Like, without telling us that you are of all of a sudden this faith, just be a good person.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, rant over. Let's get back on your story. So where are we at?
So we ultimately, let's go back to the who was on the album on King Hits.
Which at that time, that word is a word that, you know, has some negative connotations to it. Yeah.
Well, we the King Hits being the tracks, the killer tracks, the knockout
double
tracks.
entendre
Yeah. And the King Hits we were seeing at the clubs and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, look, and some, you know, we never quite cracked the nut of Triple J and all that. We just weren't what they were looking for. But PBS and a few of the other stations would play us, and Rage, you know, would play our clips. But ultimately, Bouncer sort of hit a bit of a dead end road. We did a bit of a big launch gig at one of the clubs, and we had a decent turnout and everything. But I felt like, you know, I think it's fair to say I was the more passionate one in the group. We had a couple other people involved too. We had a singer, and we had a couple of DJs. At our Bouncer launch gig, we had DJ Relic. And from that, we recorded a few tracks with him. Yeah. And then it sort of started to fizzle out a little bit. Yeah. And and so I around about the same time, the marriage started to sort of fizzle. The wife at the time was really was sort of caught up in the movement of oh, you're rapping, you're doing gigs, and we're seeing you on TV, and you're getting small write-ups here, but as soon as she sort of realised that it was going to take more work or time away from the kids and the family, she was, a bit off it. But anyway, there's a lot more to it. But the marriage ended. I was a little bit in between jobs as well. I was sort of, my training job had sort of grown a little bit, and I wanted to do that a little bit more. I was letting go of the security stuff. It was just a long, drawn out job. I ended up sort of hating it at the end. And
it's got a bit of a negative kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot, do you know what I mean? Not all negative, but
it does. Yeah.
and it's late nights. And,
it's the late nights, and I think bouncers are such assholes most of the time because it's just a shit job. It's just a really fucking shit job. Like, it's not like, you crack up a conversation with your cleaner that's fucking sitting there, cleaning the toilets. Hey, mate, what are you doing tonight? How you going? They're not going to give you much time of day. Bouncing's the same. It's a pretty shit job, man. I mean, look, the money's okay if you can talk, but it's not that great. Not for the sacrifice you make. But anyway, so I started getting more into the training thing, and I ended up finding my way back into the ring and having a couple boxing fights as a pro. Mm-hmm.
Because you're at this age, you're almost 30 now.
I was sort of early 30s. So it was like there were so many conversations throughout there was a few little stints of, I want to make a comeback, and I don't think I ever laced up the gloves was I ever really driven to go to the Olympics and all that sort of stuff? No, I was in that sort of association, but I didn't see myself sort of going to the Olympics. I wanted to turn pro. I wanted to be like Tyson, well, actually, I'll say it wasn't only Tyson that was my main influence. Muhammad Ali as well. Yeah. What I liked about Ali was he rhymed as well, and he was more of a showman. And I thought, well, you don't have to be this aggro tough guy. You can be a good talker as well. So inevitably, I started training again and shredded back down to that. It took me a while to get down to the 75 odd kilos.
Yeah, if you're at 115 at one stage, 75's a big jump.
Yeah. So what I had to do was just drop off all the weights, start running again, really watch the diet, and it gets harder to lose weight as you get older as well. And and just the first pro fight I had, I lost. And I was a little bit too heavy and a little bit sluggish. I was probably, I was the cruiserweight division, which is between 80 and 90 kilos.
So you were too heavy?
Yeah, I was too heavy, and I was also a bit like, respect to the guy I fought. Like, I probably didn't at the time give him the respect he deserved. So if he's listening to this, much respect, man. You beat me fair and square, and all that sort of stuff. But I just switched off. I just wanted to knock the guy out and get all aggressive.
Which is the wrong
mindset.
The
Gangster Benny came out. Wannabe Gangster Benny came out, trying to impress people in the audience and not fucking focusing on it's just a sport. It's ultimately just a sport. It's nothing else. It's all it is. But you get paid when you're pro, which is a little bit more of an incentive.
Because I guess when you say it's just a sport, that's the thing. You've got to keep going through the motions and doing what the plan is, and not just get angry and want to knock the guy's head off, which is the streets mentality. Yeah. But you've got to just focus, and I've got to work on my footwork. I've got to not punch. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, all that anger just consumes a hell of a lot of energy, and it's wasted energy. All you got to, breathing's a big part of it. Breathing, just relaxing and just enjoying it too, because it goes so fast. And it was a little bit longer than the amateur rounds, but it was like 4-rounder. When you first start out in the pros, you don't go straight to 10 rounds or 12 rounds unless you had a remarkable amateur career, gone to the Olympics, or you're some sort of celebrity that everyone's going to buy the tickets, and you've got a full 24/7 team working around you, and you don't have to do anything else. But I was a dad. I was trying to work, and so all that sort of stuff. But juggle shit around. Yeah.
So you lose the first fight. Does that take the wind out of your sails a bit?
Yeah, I was embarrassed. I thought I would, I was trying to become a boxing trainer, and who wants to see their trainer get punched up and train with me? And I thought, oh yeah, and I actually got in with a really good trainer, and some of the fighters on that team were like ranked in the world rankings and all that sort of stuff. So I just felt like, oh, they're just going to kick me off the team, but it was the opposite. I actually put all my prize money, well, a percentage of the prize money in a purse, because the trainer's meant to get 10%. It's an unspoken rule, and rocked up to the gym all humble and gave the trainer the envelope like you've almost like last day at work. I'll see you, boss. It's like, what are you doing? Take this. No, don't be silly. I'll see you training next week. And it was just instantly said, yeah. Oh, I thought I fucking fought terribly, and he really pulled me in, and he could see that maybe my head just wasn't quite right. Like, I think I've always been quite a sort of resilient sort of guy, and I love boxing and all that sort of stuff, but something just wasn't right with me. And he got my head right, and we had another fight, and I won that one. And then I was pumped. The reaction.
The opposite.
The opposite, right? Ready to sort of fight for the middleweight title or something like that. And he goes, nah, son, retire with the win. You're done.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Go out on a
Heartbreaking,
high.
man.
Go
Go
on
on a high. But I took it, and I knew he had my best interest in heart, because I was I'd had 15 years break since amateur.
Long time.
Yeah, it was a long time, and to have only a couple pro fights I was late 30s by that point. So it made sense. You're either fighting those guys that have just come out of the amateurs and just come out of that, Australian title standard, that are good enough to turn pro, and you end up being that journeyman. And for me, ultimately boxing has just been, it's great fitness, great self-defense, great for the mind. And I'm happy with the journey. It was good to participate in a couple pro bouts, but I wouldn't by any means say that I'm a big time pro fighter or anything like that. I gave it a crack, and
and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
That's it, man. But it also opens up the door for you to teach more people and to do that sort of
As a coach, freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Suddenly the personal training business just went, boom, everyone was wanting to train, and and even when I lost that first fight, it was surprising. I got more clients. What the hell? I thought, I looked like I made a fool of myself completely. But I think that's the thing about, being a dickhead on the street or being a defeated boxer in the ring. People can respect a defeated boxer in the ring a lot more than a street thug, and yeah.
For sure. Because there's structure there.
Yeah.
There's some actual thought behind it.
Yeah.
And they understand what you were trying to execute. You may have not been the best in the ring on that day, but fuck.
Yeah.
The mentality was there.
Yeah.
So when does the book come into it? Is this around then?
Yeah, so no, not quite. So
Don't jump too far ahead, Maloney.
We're getting there. And a lot of this is, I might, while we brought up the book, I might just hold it up here. It's called Games and the Fight, and that's actually a picture of me in that last fight we talked about.
Yeah.
And on the back, I've got the words here: success and what it takes. So ultimately, my definition of success now is happiness, right? So whatever gets you there, but it took me. This was initially double in size, so it took me 600 pages of reflection to discover that happiness is the true meaning of success. But
and that's the cheat codes of life. If people can realize that early,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
100%, yeah.
Because just be happy.
Yeah, that's because we're not all going to be billionaires. We're not all going to be millionaires. But what does it matter is if you're happy, and you're healthy. So look after yourself as well, and
sure.
Yeah, they probably come hand in hand, happiness and being healthy. So during that time of getting back into boxing, so Bouncer had sort of fizzled out. Mm-hmm. As we did a little bit with DJ Rallick, and I actually turned back to Rallick and said, look, I'm just going to do this solo. No one else is really, involved. They don't really want to do anything. And he said, yeah, man, cool. Come in, book a few sessions, go in, and he gave us a few beats. And
super nice dude.
Yeah, super nice dude. And then another mate who was in Bouncer briefly, a guy the name of Leighton. And he was in a boy band and
Boy band?
yeah, and back in the like an R&B boy band sounds a bit whack. But sorry, man. He was in an R&B group, and it was a pretty cool one as well, like Islander.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that long time ago. Yeah.
And we become pretty good mates, and we just a mate of his had a studio, and so Leighton actually recorded some of my beats or some of my tracks as well on that on this album we're working on, and Relic, and then we launched it again, had a launch gig, and if you know my music, and sometimes people might say, hey, what's up with that monkey you got on the cover of your
it's on a few
of your albums, yeah. Well, tying back into the spirituality thing, around about that time when I was just starting to get back into training and all that sort of stuff, I befriended some people from Central America, and they're like, well, just randomly, like it was such a strange thing. This person I was hanging out with goes, oh, my godfather wants to see you. What the fuck for? What have I done? This is the first thing, and I was fucking paranoid as. Oh yeah, well, no, he's a really nice guy. You should see him. And he's a real low key dude. And so I'll brush over the story. Anyway, I get to his place, and absolute gentleman, family vibes. We had some food and all that sort of stuff. And he goes, sat down. We've got a little bit more personal. Everyone left the room. It was just me and him. I'm like, all right, here we go. What the fuck have I done?
Intrigued,
yeah. Follow me, and we went into this his sort of back man cave, I guess, but it was full decorated in spiritual objects of all kinds from all around the world, and
all different cultures.
Yeah, from saints to American Indians to amethysts and all sorts of stuff like that. And I can't. It's taking so much in such a short amount of time that it was hard to comprehend, but it just felt fucking awesome when you're in there. Like, it was just fucking
Good vibe.
Good vibe. Yeah. And he goes, all right, just give me a sec and just relax. And I just sort of stood there, closed my eyes, and I just heard some chanting, smelt some sage leaves, and I just drifted, man. I just drifted into another world. Like, it just...
I don't know, no drugs or anything, it just...
No drugs, man.
Wow.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I do, like... I know we touched on brushing on some shit, but I've never really been that
No,
fucking...
but it's just to drift up... Yeah,
Just drifting off on a natural sort of vibe. And, no mushies or fucking trips or all that stuff.
Yeah.
Time and place, don't get me wrong, but, so... I started to see myself as this, like on the cover, and it's so weird. Like, I didn't know what the fuck I was either. I'm like, I was one of those monkeys with a blue face and pink, and what is that? And I was in like a herd, and all these monkeys sort of like were fronting up to me, like challenging me, throwing punches, and I was like scrapping. I was almost like back to the childhood, sort of scrapping with these monkeys, and then this has all happened so fast, but it seemed so long at the same time. Then I just remember sort of just parting ways and just having a bit of my own sort of space. Meanwhile, I'm just standing in the room like...
So your eyes are open?
They must have been closed.
Yeah, okay.
I was awake because I was standing, so I wasn't, and then I sort of I think I just like bathed in the blue water, and I just remember these beautiful colours of waterfalls and tropical birds, and then I sort of rejuvenated and sort of came out and the other mandrills, who I later found out were mandrills, challenged me, and I actually got on top, and I just climbed. I fended a few away, and climbed this big tree, which from my mind now I think is one of those big boab trees that that you see in Africa. And just sat on the top and just enjoyed paradise. And I could see all the baby mandrills and everything was peaceful. And then he just shook me and I woke up. And yeah, so that's a legitimate experience. And as you said, absolutely no drugs, just a bit of sage
Did he
leaves.
explain it afterwards? Did he say, "Mate, I saw something in you, and I knew you needed to get"? Like, how did that happen?
That's the sort of questions I wanted to ask him. So we sort of had a bit of a debrief, so to speak, and we sat in another room, and just everyone else just left us to sort of make sense of what had happened. I think one of the people that were crying and stuff like that. Like, it was quite emotional. And he goes, "Look, I can't tell you what that meant. You need to work it out over time. That's not my job. I'm just like I'm almost like a vessel to just bring you to that point. So it's like, I guess he sort of saw himself like like we're down in this neighbourhood, like the ferry from one side of the peninsula to the other, and he just drops you off and you work out your holiday from there. You work out your journey."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But what he said is, I can give you something that might help. Why don't you listen to this? And he handed me a CD. It was the 4 Agreements. And so the 4 Agreements is an old, it ties into the old Toltec. So they're a pre-Aztec race. They fit in somewhere in the middle there. But they're basic philosophy in essence, and I'm sure there's more to it. Like, I don't, but it's been summarised by an author, and he puts it down to the 4 Agreements, which is to be impeccable to your word. So speak your words with integrity, honesty, truth. Don't misuse your words. Do your best to try to speak, as truthfully and positively, and it doesn't always have to be positive, but just speak your truth. Don't talk shit. It's harder said than done. Like, we throw so many words around loosely, but when you actually sort of think about it, to be impeccable to your word, it takes a bit more thought every time you open your mouth and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so that was something that was part of it, and then there was also not to make assumptions. Which stops a lot of negative thinking. Like, I could be sitting here, Maloney, and just thinking, I've just made a fucking dickhead of myself. Maloney thinks I'm a fucking goose.
A lot of people get this sort of negative thoughts on the way home. Yeah.
But we all get, exactly. A lot of people get that, but just nip it in the butt. What fucking difference does it make? It doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
And not to take things personally, which is sort of ties in.
So this is all stuff that people were talking about thousands of years ago that is now as prominent as ever.
Well, it's not. It's still not that really well known, but it's a philosophy called the. Well, it's not.
But it makes as much sense as it ever has.
Yeah, especially with social media and all sorts of shit that goes on these days. I mean, we can be insulted on multiple levels and multiple times of the day. And that's just one day we've got to get through. But what makes it applicable is the 4th agreement is to do your best no matter what. So always do your best at trying to live by those agreements. So I generally apply that to my life. I'm not perfect at it.
It's your mantra, though.
What's that?
It's like your mantra. It's like
exactly. Yeah, it's my sort of, well, I can't even say unwritten mantra because I've written about it now and I've spoken about it now, and my albums are sort of loosely based on the themes of the 4 Agreements. So my first album, The Impeccable Word, is about it's just about acknowledging that truth in the human language and knowing when I listen to the CDs by the author, the discography's the audio book, it talks about examples of wars can start because of people's words. They use the example of a young daughter singing around the house and her mum going, stop with that racket, and then she never sings a word for the rest of her life. If you think about that, there's so much in people's language that shape the people we are, and kind of highs and lows, and and all that sort of stuff. So just really acknowledging that. And the album itself, I mean, we're not like, each song is, based on that theory, so to speak, but underliningly, yes, it's sort of bringing those sort of stories of truth out.
Yep.
And
There you go. Man, that's a lot to
Yeah.
to take in.
Yeah.
I've got so many questions, but what was this individual? What was his faith or his religion or his what was he about? You know what I mean?
I would say so. He was Central American. I would say in essence he was like a Catholic,
Right.
but a just a spiritual human, like just yeah.
And your friend that said,
Or a charismatic would probably be the
Okay.
proper terminology.
and they had a certain gift that they could, or they right.
He just had a gift. It was almost worded that way too. I have a gift that I like to share, and that was it.
Have
And
you spoken to him since?
nah, which I just don't know if it's right. I just don't know if it's right. I just don't think. I think he would reach me if he needed to. I think the whole thing too is that it's not there to be exploited. It's there to be acknowledged, and it's there to be agreed upon. Now that might seem somewhat of a contradiction because you've called your first album The Impeccable Word. Well, the agreement is to be impeccable with your words, but it's just I feel in putting out an album called The Impeccable Word, I have been impeccable with my word and followed through with a project that I wanted to follow through with.
There you go.
And also brought light to this agreement system that helped me through a real sort of troubled, lost time in my life where I just was really looking for that direction.
And after you found it, were you impeccable, or was there slip-ups?
Oh, there was definitely slip-ups. But let me sort of backtrack. After this, so during this time where I was introduced to this system, had this experience, that was my, going through the divorce. I was
a bit lost.
I was a bit lost, a little bit more than lost, man. I was starting to sort of dabble in, going back to the old bad habits, and I stepped away, from things I definitely shouldn't have even stepped into, and so this guy sort of helped me, get through all that with that experience. So it's sort of almost like a tribute, and I did, want to give him an album and all that sort of stuff, but that from The Impeccable Word, we went on to record Don't Take It Personal, which was a little bit more, let's push the boundaries a little bit. The Don't Take It Personal is a little bit more, starts talking about some of those mess ups, some of that single life and,
acknowledging your faults.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. And Assumptions, which was the third album, had the track on it, Nothing Comes Easy, which is ultimately a boxing track. So by the time I'd done Assumptions, I'd had that second boxing fight. We'd had the second pro fight. We'd had gigs in between. I was starting to run events and do things like that, just small events, and put on my own gigs or play, clubs, around the city and stuff like that. Some gigs, some were, some pretty good, decent gigs, but not interstate, just around Melbourne.
Yep.
So then when we dropped Assumptions, I recorded this track, Nothing Comes Easy. So Nothing Comes Easy did quite well. We launched the album. I got some advice. It wasn't officially under management, but I had some sort of underlining advice like, this album's really good. Why don't you drop it on college radio in the States and see how it goes? So we went with that option.
College, and look, something we don't have here at all, really, because we've got, well, not the college system that they've got, but explain for people that don't really understand what college radio sort of means in the US.
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing in itself.
It's a whole thing. So the college culture, people are quite loyal to their colleges, and most people know about the college sports, basketball, football. I mean, even high schools, and stuff like that. So they also have high school radio, but the college radio is bigger. And so then you have your own system of charts, so you can chart, but the charts, the main charts that we hear about, Billboard charts. In fact, most artists, international artists that we've heard of here in Australia, they've just had hundreds of thousands, if not millions, pumped into their marketing campaigns, and
they buy streams too.
Things boosted to get onto those charts because they can afford it, because they have these big franchises behind them, to do that. Whereas when you're an independent artist, it's a lot different. It's a lot harder. Whereas college radio is somewhat authentic to that. It's authentic, but I guess
people vote with their feet in that.
Yeah, well, they vote because they're loyal to their colleges as well. Yeah. But then, it's not sort of, oh, this college is bigger than this one. You're going to get, it's still sort of worked out in a way where it's sort of retrospective, I guess.
So how does an Aussie bloke get a leg up on American college radio?
Yeah, well, it did the album. So we just ran with the campaign. So you can sort of get a get a publicity company to kind of run the campaign for you, and they'll do a few, or get some articles done and stuff like that at the same time. And so we got onto the charts. We got up to the track "Nothing Comes Easy." Got into like the top 5, like on some of the stations across the states.
And that's rotation, or is that?
Yeah, that's
streams?
on rotation.
Yeah,
radio rotations. And then the album got up to, I think, the number 21 spot. But at the time, I noticed there was another Aussie on it as well. Sampa the Great was on the same time, and she's everyone knows, like most people in the scene know her. Yeah. Sure. So, but we were sort of in the vicinity of she got a bit higher ranks than me, but we were in the same sort of charts and all that sort of stuff during that period. And then there was also a guy who I hadn't really met him, but through some of my boxing contacts in the States, someone said, "Oh, you should send your music to him." And I sent him so I'd known him for a few years. I'd sent him the Impeccable Word, no response. I sent him Don't Take It Personal, no response. Then
Don't take it personal.
Yes, I didn't take it personally. And I didn't, So then I sent him Assumptions, and I wasn't going to assume he hated me when I sent him the album, and he didn't, and he liked that track "Nothing Comes Easy," and he goes, "I've got good news for you. I've just bought into sponsorship of a commercial radio station," and they started playing my music, and that was a dream come true. It was just a surreal moment. Like I always hoped, but just didn't think it was going to happen, especially after the experience with Bouncer and not really cracking anything sort of commercially big over here, and it got, not only did they play it, the first time they played "Nothing Comes Easy," it got reviewed by a rapper by the name of Kid Frost, who's an old school OG Latino rapper, and he used to battle Ice-T and all that sort of stuff, and he said the track was dope, and I was like, wow. And the next a few weeks later got a call, and Benny, we need you to come over here. I've just signed up a DJ by the name of DJ Bobby B. He's the DJ for West Coast rapper Sugar Free, who's he's Sugar Free's. Well, I'd heard of him he's on the DJ Quick album that released in the late 90s, and they've got a track together, and he's very West Coast, like full on, very funky style of rapper, and DJ Bobby B was his DJ, so he was on the label. So I was like, well, this is the best opportunity I've had through my music by far, and but I had because of the juvenile shit I'd got into when I was younger, I was allowed to do security, but I had a bit of a black mark against my name
internationally.
Yeah. And I was there's a period of time where I couldn't get into the States at all.
Yeah.
But I applied for a special visa, and they let it through. So I eventually got it all cleared. Events, without diving into things, events might play out a little bit differently in the narrative of the book. But I'll tell you the real story here, the real deal, Maloney.
Real story, yeah.
So we actually did get through all right, and got over there, and we started laying down some tracks. And there was another producer there. So when I first rocked up off the plane and everything, there was a bit of a studio party and got to know everyone. And I didn't know, they wanted me to perform, but I didn't perform because I hadn't slept. And I was like, no, we'll save this. And it was just sort of like, small studio vibe. But there were people getting up and performing, trying to like literally get record deals and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. It's like an audition almost.
Yeah, well, the chick that partially owns the label, she'd co-written songs with Janet Jackson.
Yeah, wow.
And stuff like that. Like she'd actually featured as a backup vocalist and songwriter on Janet Jackson's Control album. So there were platinum albums in the studio, and she was also a singing coach, and she'd coached multiple celebrities, and so she was a big part of the label. And then this other friend of mine through the boxing world, and I said, no, I'll just start fresh tomorrow, and we'll start recording. So the next day, so they once I arrived in LA, they were well, the studio was a little bit out of LA, but they were transporting me around through the city and taking me to and from the hotel and looking after me and looked after my accommodation, all that sort of stuff, which was great. And yeah, we got to the studio and I started working, not only DJ Bobby B, there was another producer by the name of Jay Stank. And Jay was like, again, let's call it an R&B group. Let's just kill the boy band
thing altogether.
Let's just kill that, man. That's just whack, you know. So he used to do gigs with like Whitney Houston and stuff like that back in the day. And but when he dived into the hip hop world, one of the most notable albums he'd worked on was the Bloods and Crips albums in the early 90s. So he was on that with DJ Battle Cat and you know, so he'd been right up there with so what happened in the early 90s when I guess not long after NWA had sort of hit the world with the gangster rap scene, people got this idea together, and the movie Colours had come out, and Bloods and Crips was, you know, and LA riots and all that sort of stuff. Let's do something sort of evolutionary for hip hop, and we'll get Blood rappers and Crip rappers. But I use that term lightly because if you know your LA gang culture, there's multiple.
Yeah, even within the Crips, there's multiple factions. Yeah,
but they found, you know, well, they mustn't have been crews that wanted to kill each other in cold blood, but they found them and they got this album together, and Jay worked on that, and there was 2 or 3 of albums of that came out. So we recorded 4 tracks over there, and then so the day I was flying back, and it was pretty much just sort of work, man. It was just like hotel, studio, breakfast, do a bit of training in the gym and before the studio session, and you know, it's like work, but it was, you know, it was a good. It's the type of work I want to be doing. Like I was wrapped.
You're overseas. You're doing it in another place.
And I got, you know, I saw a little bit of stuff while I was there, I guess. But so the day I flew back, this is where things started to freaking turn, man. Like the day I flew back. So we kicked on a little bit longer in the studio, and they've got dispensaries and shit over there. So we'd have a bit of a smoke and all that sort of stuff. Not that, and they knew that I wasn't much of a smoker, but they were going hard. And we kicked on to about probably 4 a.m. and then Bobby had to drive me back to the hotel. Mate, the road was just like I couldn't see in front of me. Like the fog was that thick. Yeah. And Bobby's like driving around stoned off his head in his SUV, and we're watching like is it Baby Boy? One of the old 90s like from the Boys in the Hood area, or I think I don't know, Baby Boy. One of those 90s movies. And he's sort of half on the road, half watching the screen. I'm like, Bobby, you all right, man? And because the fog was that thick, he's fucking just swerved the car last minute and just narrowly missed, you know, one of the middle pillars of the laneway on the freeway. Yeah, wow. Anyway, we sort of like, Bobby, you all right, man? Oh yeah, man. I've got to get that new prescription for my glasses, man. I'm like, damn, you need glasses?
You're stoned in the
fog, in LA. Fucking crazy. But we got home in one piece. But this is what I'm getting to. I wake up, I wasn't sleeping that well, a bit jet lagged and stuff. Woke up at about 11, turned on the news, Kobe Bryant's helicopter crashed. And
that's what the fog was.
Our studio in Irvine was, we were actually sitting there, smoking, just watching planes just come over the top of our head. So the John Wayne Airport was just within 2 kilometres of where we were. So the fog, so to leave the chopper in that weather was just crazy, man. Like it was just we were struggling in a car. So that was shit, and that was on Australia Day, 2020. Come back to Melbourne, just went back to the gym, was pumped. Yeah, I got presented the record deal when I was over there too. Like the owner took me out for dinner and gave me the contract, but I wanted to just sort of sit in it for a while, and so I hadn't actually officially signed. And we got back, and I just was telling all my friends, and I was still doing a bit of boxing training, telling all my clients about the experience, and I used to train. This is 2020. I was getting still quite busy with that side of my work. It was 5 a.m. and my phone just started going off, ringing. Oh, that's fucking weird. I look at the phone and, did you hear what happened? Did you hear what happened? What the fuck? And I had to sort of say to the clients, oh, excuse me, something's happened. I've got to make a call. It was to the owner of the label. Actually, I think it might have been the chick. Well, one of the owners, the lady that Maloney, who was with done the track with Janet Jackson and stuff, and she goes, "Oh my God, you don't know, Jay's just passed away." So Jay Shanklin. So I'm like, "Well, what the heck happened?" So what had happened, and it was a bit sort of mixed messages because she was. It was almost strange they were calling me, but there was more to it. What had happened, Jay got back in the studio to work on these tracks we'd recorded, and suddenly he was just dropped, and he'd had this massive, like, we thought it was a heart attack, but it was a blood vessel burst here, and he suddenly died. So it was sort of like, I don't know, everyone just felt compelled to sort of call me to say, hey, Jay's was working on your album and just died. And it was the strangest thing. Like, I felt like I was choking back tears. I had clients here waiting. I didn't know what to do. I just said, look, we better just finish it up. Yeah, it's all right. Don't worry about the lesson. I'll make up for it next time, whatever. And just take the morning off and just comprehend what had happened. Yeah. And then I was like a bit lost. I was like, I haven't signed this contract yet. What do I do? Because Jay was big on getting me to stick with the label. And, after multiple conversations with the owner and everything, I ended up deciding to sign, and we finished the album here in Australia. It took a little bit of a while, but COVID hit. That COVID hit in 2020, so there was no going back to the States for a couple of years. Yeah. And so that was weird. So we found
they were championing you to go back there. So
they were like the initial, when I first did those songs, I mean, we were it was all big talk. Like, we all right, we leave now. We'll have you back in March. We'll finish the album. We'll do this. We'll do that. There was a plan in place. Well, Jay died, passed away. Rest his soul. COVID hit, and things just went fucking south. It was really, really tough from there. But we ended up finishing the album. They released a single in 2020 called "In Cali." It was which we didn't do a video or anything, and all that, but that's available on Spotify, and that's a little bit about the journey going to California. And then it took a while. We didn't get the album, The Best, which completes the Agreement series, out to last year, to 2023. And but so we did a few videos and stuff like that. But what I would say, one of the positives of signing with the label was that it sort of enabled me to kind of collaborate with other well-known artists on the West Coast. So last year we also dropped Beg For It with Glasses Malone, and recently Iron Mike featuring Baldacci. Yep. And Iron Mike ties back into the
for sure
everything we've spoken about almost, and so that's one of my favourite tracks.
For sure.
So that's basically where we're at, and now the round 2 music contract is I'm sort of a little bit in limbo at the moment, sort of deciding what direction to take. And
isn't it like, can't you just do your own solo thing now without the labels? Isn't that where we're at?
Yeah, I'm contemplating it, but it's paper too. I'm a dad. I've got family responsibility, but I'm as driven as ever. I don't want to. I'm never one to sort of. I don't think giving up's in my DNA. I'm happy to take a few punches, or as many that come. I don't actually mind it, but occasionally it's nice to get one in yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So this next album is still with that Like, who are you signed to now? I'm confused.
Oh, okay, yeah, it is. I think I'm confused. I've confused myself.
Yeah.
So what happened? So we're sort of contemplating which direction we go. We've got a few of those collaboration tracks out, which is kind of good for you. You know, it's just and look, you sort of look at collaborations like that. Yeah, Australian. You know, having a couple Americans, what are they charging him? Not much, man. It was just barely covering freaking production costs. And they probably wouldn't want me to say, you know, but these guys looked after me like a proper homeboy. So respect and, you know, appreciate what those guys did. They understood my story. They understood where I was coming from. They understood the struggles that we'd faced. But they ultimately just wanted to put out some music and just try something a bit different.
Yep.
So, which was good. That it's opened a few doors. It's sort of opened up a few. Like, I've got a lot of love on that last track, and from you know, like conversing with rappers in the States, I'd never thought that I heard as a kid that suddenly we're having conversations and you know and all that sort of stuff. So I guess I'm you know sort of in that sort of stage. Do I keep managing myself or do I look for other options? Well, during that journey, there was a label from Amsterdam that showed a little bit of interest as a record label and a management.
How does that happen? Amsterdam? That's a odd one.
Yeah. On paper it seems that way, but when we just connected, you know, we had a little bit in common, and I also, you know, when I spoke about some of my black ancestry, when I dive into it, my DNA is from Nigeria. So the owner had that in common. She was part Dutch, part German, part Nigerian, and similar to me.
Yeah.
And then her producer is from Nigeria as well. So it sort of seemed like a good fit. And I like kind of, as you know, when with the mashup track, I like just sort of jumping on any beat, sort of challenging myself, try something a little bit different. Yep. I've always been about that. I try to do stuff that no one's ever done and do it a way that no one's ever done it. Do it as me. Mm-hmm. You know, I've had people look at what I do and say, oh man, you need to work on your flow. And like, I do work on my flow. That's who I am. You know, I'm not trying to sound like anyone else or you know, they're probably with their best intentions. Why don't you work with producers? I said, why don't you reference somebody? And I'm like, I reference myself. I reference my stories. I reference my life when I do my music, because to me, that's the true art form. And that's true hip hop. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I see it. So
you can only do it from your perspective. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah.
In an authentic capacity.
Yeah. 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 At 100%. So
whether that converts to other people understanding it,
yeah,
or to a huge commercial audience is a different thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You got to do what you do.
I'd rather sacrifice that just to know that I've done it my way, and if it breaks through, it breaks through.
For sure, man. And that's the right mentality.
Yeah. So fittingly, this next track is called "Stop Me Now." So like, if all that can't stop me, this certainly won't. And I'm still keen to keep going and keep writing music, and I'm open to sort of work with as many different producers, or you know, I'm open to opportunities right now. So yeah, happy to sort of jump on features or anything that's going around, or yeah.
People to hit you up directly?
Yeah, absolutely. Hit me up directly. Instagram's always good. At Benny Sinclair. Yeah, you'll find me, and DM. You know, emails there. You know, get in touch, and you know, we can cook something up.
For sure, Benny. We've almost done 2 hours, man.
Might
be time to wrap it up. Benny
yeah, sweet.
Sinclair, thanks for coming in, man.
No worries. Sweet. Before we wrap it up,
do it.
I'll give a quick plug to the book, Games in the Fight. This sums up the journey. I think people that don't know me actually prefer the book. Because it's, you know, I've had some comments that, you know, there is some inspiration in that. And it's ultimately about overcoming adversity and finding your own personal happiness. So if you want a copy, you can hit me up on my website through Instagram. I'll get you out a signed copy, or you can get it on Amazon. Games in the Fight by Benny Sinclair. Now, this copy is for my man here, Maloney.
Oh, thanks, man.
Thank you. Appreciate his time. And I hope you enjoy the book, brother.
For sure. Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it. And we've had a bit on today, so thanks for bearing with us with everything.
No, it was dope, man.
And Benny, thanks for coming.
No worries, brother.
Cheers.
Peace.
3,000.